India, home of 1.3 billion people, is a confluence of religions, traditions, and customs. A thriving global center of technology and the world's largest democracy. As one of the oldest civilizations in the world with a rich cultural heritage and diversity, and as the fifth largest economy in the world, India is proud to assume the presidency of G20.
Hello viewers, welcome to my channel De Facto with Naomi. Let's talk about the most awaited international event of the year, the G20. Before moving forward, please take 10 seconds and like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. Let's resume. As we all know, India is currently the chair of the G20 or the Group of 20. India began its presidency tenure on 1st December 2022 and it shall last till 30th November 2023. So far, India has distinguished itself as an orchestrator of harmony and balance for the rest of the world. India kick-started its presidency term with a series of cultural initiatives, including several Jan Bhagidari movements. As a nation that is deeply committed to multilateralism and forging a new world order, India has hosted about 200 meetings in 56 cities across 32 work streams. Prime Minister Modi has called it an action-oriented, ambitious and decisive presidency. The success of the presidency is owed to a nationwide participation, with all the states and union territories pitching in and doing their bit. From Arunachal Pradesh in the east to Dholavira in the west, from Srinagar in the north to Kochi in the south, the G20 logo has illuminated over 100 monuments across the length and breadth of our nation. So realistically speaking, the G20 presidency belongs to the entire nation. Let's talk a bit about the background. India took over the presidency from Indonesia when the world was still going through a crisis. There's still recession in the world. Majority of the economies are not performing too well. The food, fuel, fertilizer prices are still very high. There are massive supply chain disruptions. The Russia-Ukraine war is still ongoing. And yet, despite all this turmoil surrounding each one of us, India has been able to emerge as a global leader, as the Vishwa Guru. Let's now understand what is G20 or the Group of 20. The G20 or the Group of 20 is an informal intergovernmental forum comprising of 19 countries and the European Union. The European Union is represented by the European Commission and the European Central Bank. Together, the Group of 20 comprises of 66% of the human population, 75% of international trade, and 80% of the global GDP. The G20 operates without a permanent secretariat, and it is the incumbent chair which establishes a temporary secretariat for the duration of its term. To maintain a continuity in its agenda, the G20 has the concept of a troika. Typically, troika is a Russian term for a vehicle that is pulled by 3 horses. In the case of G20, this means that the previous president, that is Indonesia, the current president, that is India, and the subsequent president, that is Brazil, make up the troika. This concept of troika also leads to an inherent sense of decentralization in command, control, agenda setting, and implementation. But why was G20 established in the first place? G20 was established against the backdrop of the Asian financial crisis in the 1990s. It was set up as a forum for finance ministers and central bank governors to come together, cooperate, and prevent global mishaps in terms of macroeconomic issues. So the core mandate of G20 is to promote global financial stability. Then again, the world was hit by an economic meltdown in 2007, and in 2008, G20 was elevated to the level of heads of state or the heads of government. Thereafter, it was designated as the premier institution for international cooperation. And in order to stay relevant in contemporary times, G20 has broadened its mandate to look into issues beyond macroeconomics. It also now deals with issues such as climate change, sustainable development, agriculture, health, trade and commerce, corruption, anti-terrorism, and the like. The G20 works through three parallel mechanisms. We have the finance track, which comprises of finance ministers and central bank governors, the Sherpa track, which is coordinated by the Sherpas of the member countries, and the Sherpas are basically personal emissaries of the heads of government or the heads of state of the member countries. For India's presidency tenure, our Sherpa is Mr. Amitabh Kant, who was also the former CEO of the Niti Aayog. Now both these tracks have their individual working groups who coordinate activities, discuss the agendas, build consensus amongst the member countries and the invitee nations throughout the presidency period. Now the third parallel mechanism is the engagement groups, which brings together civil society members, women, youth, parliamentarians, think tanks, businesses and researchers. Now coming back to India's G20 presidency and its achievements, I want to talk to you a little bit about India's G20 logo, especially since our president has sent out the invites for the G20 Leaders Summit as the head of state of Bharat and not of India. The logo is carefully designed and draws inspiration from India's national flag. So the predominant colors are saffron, white, green, and blue.
The 7 petals in the logo signify the 7 seas and the coming together of 7 continents at G20 India 2023.
The lotus is our national flower and the crowning glory of our earth, representing harmony and balance with nature, is beautifully represented in the G20 logo. Below the G20 logo is the word Bharat written in the Devanagari script. Our theme is drawn from the Maha Upanishad and reads Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means one earth, one family and one future. This also resonates deeply with our core civilizational values of Bharat as a nation. The whole world is our family. Let's now talk about India's G20 priorities. We are focused upon green development, climate finance, and life. Life is the lifestyle for environment. We're focusing on accelerated, inclusive, and resilient growth. We're focusing on accelerating progress on SDGs, that is the Sustainable Development Goals. We're talking about technological transformation and digital public infrastructure. We are focusing on multilateral institutions for the 21st century and women-led development. Let's now look at India's achievements during its presidency tenure. First of all, this is the 18th edition of the G20 summits. As we now head towards the Leaders Summit on 9th and 10th of September in New Delhi, the overarching theme shall be strong, balanced, sustainable and inclusive growth in India and the rest of the world. One major departure from erstwhile summits is that the voice of the Global South is both being heard and acknowledged for the first time ever. India has given a boost to debt sustainability frameworks by focusing on strengthening multilateral banks. This has been done with the goal of enhancing developmental finance and lending activities through the finance track. The finance track's outcome document has also set definitive goals to enhance productivity gains and financial inclusion through digital public infrastructure. India's presidency also needs to be seen in the light of a presidency of many firsts. A new working group on disaster risk reduction has been established to encourage collaborative work and multidisciplinary research in the arena. Also, in the light of India being one of the most fertile grounds for startups in the world, India's G20 presidency has gone on to establish a group called the Startup 20 with a vision to create a $1 trillion startup ecosystem around the world. India's G20 presidency has also served as a bridge between the global north and the global south, thus healing the global dissensions and divisions in its wake. In the Agriculture Ministers' meeting, Shri Anna or millets has been given a further push against the backdrop of the International Year of Millets. Deccan high-level principles on nutrition and food security have also been adopted unanimously. India's G20 presidency has also focused on women-led development. Bhagidari in terms of local self-help groups have also been given a further push, and success stories have been shared the world over. And most importantly, India has been successful in making the term Global South a part of the international relations lexicon. From a term that was used only in hindsight, it has now become a term that embodies change and inclusiveness. In terms of the outcome document, Dr. S. Jaishankar has said that India has been able to build consensus in nearly 95% of the document so far. In a nutshell then, India's presidency has been able to bring forth a unanimity around the idea of a human-centric globalization. We have been successfully able to focus on those issues that unite us instead of focusing on those that bring about factionalism and discord. Also, India's proposal in including African Union, which is comprised of 55 countries in the G20, is monumental and will have far-reaching impacts in the visibility of the Global South. And most importantly, our domestic values and governance models are being adopted globally. They are becoming international preferences. From the position of merely advertising as Incredible India for tourism purposes, we have emerged as Credible India for the world. And lastly, the biggest achievement of India. 43 heads of delegations, the largest ever in the history of G20, will be participating in the New Delhi summit on 9th and 10th of September 2023. And most importantly, India's presidency has provided thought leadership to 1.4 billion Indians and 6.6 billion others around the world. Before wrapping this up, let's also look at the challenges that India has faced in its presidency tenure. Firstly, India would not want Russia to be condemned internationally in very harsh tones while under its presidency. The Western nations as a bloc want Russia to be secluded further, and G20 provides the perfect platform to achieve this goal. The French President Emmanuel Macron issued a statement stating that Zelensky would be terribly missed in the summit at New Delhi. The West wanted Ukraine to be admitted as a special invitee by India, alongside countries like Bangladesh, Singapore, UAE, Oman, Nigeria, Egypt, Netherlands, Spain, and Mauritius. Also, not all the nations in the G20 look eye to eye. It's Russia versus US, it's India versus China, especially with China's counter aggression in the recent days. China has also raised objections about India's G20 motto, saying that it is in a non-UN language. And lastly, to bring about consensus in any discussion amongst all the G20 members is a painstaking exercise in itself. And most importantly, through it all, India needs to ensure that its economic and geopolitical interests are not compromised and hampered to uplift someone else's interests in the global arena. Before winding this up, I just want to say that India has had a prolific presidency year so far, and that we look forward to the summit on 9th and 10th of September. Lastly, please like, share and subscribe to my channel and leave a word of encouragement in the comment section below. With this, I take your leave. Stay well, stay healthy and stay out of trouble. Over and out.